You're listening to the Smith House Adventure Show.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Brian Smith, and you're watching the Smith House Adventure Show. Today's guest is Lisa Mason, the co-founder and president of Operation Talk to Me Johnny. It's a nonprofit organization that works to bring awareness and support to the mental health battle faced by our veterans and first responders. Lisa, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Brian. Really happy to be here.
This is always a hard subject when we talk about Canada losing one of her sons to suicide. Can you please tell us about Sergeant John Little and how a tragedy is turning into a safety net for other first responders and service members?
Yeah, I mean, talking about John is one of my favorite things to do now. He was 36 years old when he passed in 2021. He had an 18-year military career with 2 tours to Afghanistan. He was on Roto 108 and 309. And, he just... I recently said in a speech that he was a complex and beautiful soul, and I think that that's probably one of the best ways to describe him. He, had the toughness and, the toughness that is required in the military. He was very black and white, which I think is probably military-esque. But he loved to create, and he was, a poet and a songwriter and loved to draw and make models and do all sorts of things that way as well. So it's really interesting to see sort of those very different aspects of John and how they come out of one person. So, he joined the military basically right out of high school. From the time that he was in grade 4, and he met a prisoner of war at school who had come in to do a talk. He knew that he wanted to be in the military. Him and his best friend at the time both decided early on that that's what they wanted to do. John went into infantry, and his best friend is a Padre. So, after grade 12, graduating, and dad kind of said, well, you're not sitting around the house, so what are you doing? You're getting a job, or you're joining the military, or doing whatever. And John went and wrote his military testing in Sarnia at the armories there, and was off to Saint Jean in December. So and he loved it. He thrived there. There's been a lot of stories from guys who will tell you all about how he really didn't care about what the powers that be could do to him. If he didn't agree with something, he made sure they knew it. And but he had absolutely no problem putting in the work. He wasn't there to complain, and he wasn't there to disrupt anything. He just felt like there was better ways to do things, and he made sure that his opinions were known on that. But, he was a jokester too, right? So they'd be out on course or doing some terrible task that they make you guys do. And he'd be making jokes the whole time, or singing some made up song that he made up about how, brutal this particular exercise was, or something like that. Just anything that really sort of brought the morale up of the troops around him, and, really made everybody else feel good as they were going through hell. So I remember when he was in Afghanistan, both times I sent gift packs over all the time, to the point where he actually had to ask me to stop. It's like, you need to slow down. So, all the guys would always get all excited whenever Johnny got mail, because it was always some big box of random stuff from me. And one of the things that he asked me for in one of the few, ICQ or whatever we were using at the time, I don't even remember now, calls that him and I had, was a pair of roller skates. I'm like, what are you going to do with roller skates if there's sand everywhere? But a pair of roller skates, not roller blades, but actual roller skates with all 4 wheels, and a Speedo. I'm like, what are you doing? So his intention was, and I don't know if it ever actually happened or not, I haven't seen the video if it did, was to do a music video over there to Rihanna's Umbrella. in a Speedo and roller skates. I was like, of course you are. Sure.
Weird things happen when you're trying to stay amused.
And John was good at it, right? His creative side really helped him, pull out all of these different ideas and come up with these, ridiculous things to do or say or whatever to keep himself amused as well as the people who were serving with him. So, you know, he just he had a fun nature about him. And if he wasn't teasing me or our youngest brother in some way, like it just wasn't John. You knew something was kind of eating at him or whatever. I remember when we were doing the ice bucket challenge back in the day. And so, of course, I got nominated by somebody. And so I'm standing in my bathtub in a bikini because where else are you going to do it in downtown Toronto, which is where I was at the time. And, dump this bucket of ice on my head. And I nominated John as one of the people. Well, John's the type to make sure that he outdoes you. Like he wants to be bigger and better and, have the greater impact. And so they were driving across Canada to one of the shooting challenges or CAFSAC, is that right? Anyway, so they were driving and he went and bought a pink bikini with a pink bicycle helmet. And then they lifted up this massive recycle bin full of ice and water and lifted it up on like one of these like U-Haul tailgate things that lift up, and two guys dumped it over his head. And somewhere floating around on Facebook, this video still exists, and everybody who comes across it, loves it and thinks it's hilarious, and we all forget about it. And then eventually somebody comes across it again, and you get that opportunity to watch. But it's just he was such a funny guy, and but had a way of being really serious about the things that needed to be serious. And it's one of the things that I miss the most about him is that ability to have that humor in sort of these difficult times. And I think that's part of, what I'm trying to do a little bit and some of what we're doing here. So
outside the military, what is a story that you always think back of as just, that was Johnny?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. I think, watching the way that he was with his four boys, they are now 8, 10, 12, and 14. And hard to believe that his oldest just graduated from grade 8, but we're watching that happen. But the way that he was with his kids, and he loved video gaming with them and talking about hockey and the Leafs and and like John would be spouting off statistics about guys in some sport that I didn't even know he followed. And I'm like, what? What do you know about cricket? No, maybe not cricket, but you know what I mean? Like he knew so much. And so you see his oldest son mimicking that a little bit now. I've got him into football, which was not a huge sport for John. John followed it, but it wasn't one of his favorites. And so I've got his oldest son following football now, and he does the same thing. He'll be telling me stats about some kid in like college football program. And I'm like, where did you even get this? And so it's fun to see those things live in his children still. But certainly, yeah, like he could have a conversation about just about any sport and be able to speak intelligently about it, which was always kind of fun. But one of the things that was quintessentially John was he would actually take the opposing view to his own beliefs on a particular topic simply for the art of having a debate with somebody.
Just love being the contrarian just to have the debate.
Just to be just to debate with you. And I think, it wasn't necessarily to be to incite conflict or anything like that, but he firmly believed, and I think this is something that lacks in today's society, but he firmly believed that you should have a full and complete understanding of a situation before you developed a bias towards it. And so he would, even though, you could tell him, he would believe that the sky is blue, but he would tell you it's green just to see, one, how you reacted to it, whether or not you were willing to be educated and to learn and be curious and things like that. And it was so Johnny. I mean, you'd see him go off on these like massive like Facebook rants, and simply just to see who would bite on a comment that he could then debate in the comments for 3 days. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, those guys were important. The ones that 3 hours went by, you're arguing about something that has no meaning at all. And you're like, oh, cool. That was a bit of a good waste of time. We should really be cleaning up all this brass soon from the ranges and stuff like that. Like, yeah, those types of dudes made the military just manageable when everything was horrible, whether it was officers or, food, ammo. Somebody cited the bivouac in an area that was going to flood because, oh no, it doesn't rain there. And then that's the one time where it torrential downpours. And you'd have a guy like him who will say the one smart aleck thing or something just to whatever. And you go, what? And then you kind of forget about all that other stuff. And you're just putting your mind somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we've kind of heard the most from different people that he's worked with is that ability to really keep spirits up. And then from some of the people that he's trained, just, he was always good natured about everything. He never required anybody to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. But he was thorough. He was extremely thorough. And I think that's part of that learning and wanting to be curious and whatever is, whenever John took on a task, he made sure he knew all 360 degrees of it. Mostly because he wanted to tell the higher ups that they were doing it wrong, but also because he knew that if he ever had to do the training himself one day, he wanted the troops coming out to be prepared.
And that's sometimes what you need is that NCO type that isn't afraid of a career so much. Is if there's a wrong, they will set that straight because they're actually looking out for the troops. And if they're hard on the troops, it's because they set a standard for themselves and they want other people to kind of reach their potential. I mean, you look back at it now and you're like, he wasn't a dick. He was just, I was just young, dumb, and that guy was really great and stuff like that. And you can kind of appreciate some of those things later, but I mean, yeah, sometimes you can't in that moment.
Yeah. Also, he was a bit of a dick.
It doesn't help. Yeah. You're never a sweetheart if you're going to be a contrarian to people to have a debate about the sky being green. That's usually, there's a sinister little bit in someone where they go, I'm going to fuck with this person just because I can.
Yeah.
Hey, wait, this rank makes it even easier for me to do this. Go find some grid squares and give it to the RQ, okay?
Yeah.
There's always, and I mean, I look back at so many instructors and things like that, and the ones that played those games were the best. And the ones that you remember were the games were there and they screwed with you, but there was a fun little mischievous to it that you kind of caught it. And then you go, okay, I get it. Okay, yeah, you got me because I'm brand new. Of course, I'm not going to know this stuff. Thanks. But
yeah.
What's a memory that you know of like his childhood that maybe kind of set it where you could see the path that he was going to take, and you just, whether or not if it was military, that serving that was just going to be in his future?
Yeah, that's an easy one. I remember he actually got called to the principal's office because one of the teachers on recess called him a playground cop. So he had to have been maybe grade 6, maybe. And one of the kids was being bullied on the playground by somebody a little bit older. And the teacher was nowhere in sight, or I'm not sure. Anyway, so John went over to deal with it himself and took matters into his own hands, to help this kid out who was being bullied and, get this bully off his back and whatever else. And I can't remember if it actually came to, a bit of a shoving match or if he was just jacking up this kid and got caught by the teacher, or exactly what the details were. Mom will remember to a T. But anyway, him and the bully ended up in the principal's office. And John's like, what the hell is happening?
Justice is this?
So anyway, the bully got dealt with first because that was the more serious of the two. And then John got called into the principal's office, and the principal's like, you can't be a playground cop. Like, it's not your job. You need to go get a teacher and, whatever. And John's basically explaining to this individual, like, I didn't have time to go get a teacher, right? Like, this kid needed help, and so I helped him, and that should be a good thing, and I shouldn't be in trouble. I did the right thing. And the teacher's like, well, yes, helping somebody is a good thing, but not in the way that you did it. And so he's like, call my dad and try to explain that one to him then. I was like, all right.
Yeah, sometimes the doing the right thing at school just lands you in the same amount of trouble as the bully. But I mean, at the end of the day, you'll feel that wrong, but you also feel the right in it. So
yeah. And that's kind of where John, spent a lot of his time, right? Just because it was socially wrong didn't mean that it was actually wrong. And so, but from that very young age, and I mean, we were kids in the 90s, right? So in the 80s and 90s. So like you grew up playing, cowboys and Indians and cops and robbers and all of those types of things. And now we know that some of those things are not appropriate anymore, but there was always, and John always played that sort of authoritarian person. And so, when he got older and the army started to become more of a thing on his radar, it wasn't surprising at all.
That natural path. It was that day with the bully. He learned how to give a knife hand properly, and something just clicked inside of him. You know what? I might be able to make a career out of doing that to people.
Yes. And he loved it. If he could jack you up for no reason other than to jack you up, that he was in his prime that day.
There are many that are like that. Then you start going, this power feels good. Okay. But with great power comes great responsibility. And that's where certain ones don't know how. And the ones that have that bit of that dark humor to it were always the best ones to jack you up, because there was something, I don't know, it was just, there was an insult to it. There was something else to it. There was a little bit of this. Like, you didn't know how to take it, but you're like, I want to laugh, but that's going to get me in more trouble.
Yeah.
So I have to learn to laugh on the inside. And it never really works, because some of them are so good and they practice at whatever lines, and somebody else is getting jacked up, and all of a sudden you giggle, not meaning to, because that was a great roast line. All of a sudden you're like, now it's on me. Hello. Yes, Sergeant. I don't know. You're just the next George Carlin. I don't know. Can I give you a compliment? Is that going to help me? Or, oh, no. It's just made it worse. Ah, perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, and I mean, John was always the type, he'd jack you up at work, but he'd take you for your beer afterwards, right? So he was very good at, and maybe all military guys are like this. I don't know. I'm sure many are, but he was very good at compartmentalizing those things. Work was work, and outside of work was outside of work, and never shall the two, bleed into each other, except for internally for him personally. But I remember when he passed, I started reaching out to some of the names that I knew, or that we had heard of or whatever. And the number of people who were like, I didn't even know Johnny had a sister. Oh God. Okay.
Well, it is a weird thing. Like, there are countless dudes. I don't know their first name. I couldn't tell you much about anything, right? It's just the last name or a nickname. And that's all you ever really did. And it's like, yeah, that's just, whatever a nickname is for somebody. Most are horrible and mean. But you just start nerding people that. And then you go, oh, maybe you a family day. You might see them with the wife and kids or certain things like that, or maybe a girlfriend. But yeah, sometimes with that extended family, you don't know. You're like, I know he's got a wife and kids. He might be an only child. He might be the first of 12. I don't know. But yeah, it's a weird thing where you can learn so much about people, but also not about other parts of their lives. And that's still big parts of their lives. But, when you're having a bad time, you're not going, man, my sister is so great. She makes the best cookies. No, you're going, look what he's doing over there. Why is he doing his boots like that? Hey, Booty. That's your new name now, Booty. I don't like that. That's what it is now, right? And
even better.
Things where you don't you learn more about the courses they've done or things like that, or go, oh, he's done his jump course. Yeah, he's recce. He's this, he's that. And then you go, what about his family? No idea.
Well, and I think that's so interesting, right? Because in civilian society, we'll know a ton about, people's family lives and, what they do as their careers and all of these other things. But you never actually really know the person. Whereas I find in the military, you all know, each other's integrity levels and loyalty levels and all of these other things that in a civilian world you would never really need to test. Mm-hmm. So those deep, impactful things about each other. But to your point, you don't even know their first name.
I think you hit it on the head, right? Like knowing about family does nothing to know if, this guy can carry the equipment or he can do this or he can do that. Yeah, so I think you're very right about that, where it is just the priorities of like, what courses have you done? That's cool. That's cool. Oh, cool. That. Yeah. Whereas like, you like skiing on the outside? I don't care because I don't like skiing. Or like, because it's so weird. Like everyone's in uniform. Everyone looks the same. But then as soon as you get everyone going to the bar, you've got the guy who looks like the cowboy, the guy who looks like the gangster, the hillbilly, the guy who wears hunting colors everywhere. He thinks he's going in the duck blind constantly, right? Like, it's so weird when you see the eclectic look of people like, oh, that's what you look like kind of a civvy. Okay. That hat looks kind of goofy on you. Know that, right? Like, it makes your face look fat. Not even a little fat. Like, you look really fat with that hat now that all I see is fat. And you're like, I'm not taking off my hat. I know what you're doing. It's okay. Just look fat. Yeah, right. Like, and it's that weird thing of just, you love the guys, but you will pick on and do weird little things.
Absolutely.
And just absolutely love them. But it's just that little, it's big brother, big sisters, little brother, little sister, depending on, time in for different people and stuff like that. Who gets to kind of pick on who a little bit more and who has to earn their stripes. And they go, all right, there's a new batch. Now I get to be, I'm a bigger fish now. Okay. But I mean, to this day, I mean, there's guys where like constantly, like you'll just go out and do something just because, hey, that guy was great for me on course or he helped me out. There's those little things that just mean more than his name is Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look, that's the way it needs to be for all of you, right? For anybody in the military, like you need to know in a firefight, who's doing what and, who's got the capabilities of standing their ground and, who do I maybe need to watch a little bit more because they're a risk taker or maybe really not a risk taker or, whatever. And we just don't have that in civilian life, right? So I think it's so interesting the way that, and, I've learned this over the last 3 years in particular since John passed and getting to know some of the guys that, he was friends with and served with and whatever is how much they knew John, but they knew nothing about John.
What was your favorite story learning from some of those that served with him that maybe gave you an insight that you never knew about him beforehand?
Yeah, John was pretty much an open book. So in terms of insight into, who he was, I don't know that there was a lot of stories that provided anything different than sort of what I saw in him on a day-to-day basis growing up and, as adults. But I think, some of the stories are just absolutely hilarious to, for one, like you hear about a story of them on the range and, they're trying to teach these reserve guys or new recruits or whatever how to shoot properly and do whatever. And, he's on the instructing on the range with one of his buddies, and some recruit or something turns around and, they've still got the gun pointed and now they're pointing it at, this other corporal. And John's like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like hitting the kid on the helmet with his baton.
There are some scary times sometimes on the ranges where you go, oh, and then like everyone's just freaking out for a sec. And the one like, what? Remember,
Yeah.
that's downrange. That is downrange. Yeah.
But I think, just hearing some of the things that that he really went through, I think was a bit surprising. And, I think it's one of those things where we didn't really know how hard he was trying to get himself mental health support. When it came to us, he was always, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And it wasn't until the Board of Inquiry after his death that we really realized how much he was struggling to find somebody to help him. And I think that once we learned that, we kind of felt a little bit better about it all. In the fact that, because John was always a fighter, right? And he was always sort of that guy to stand up and never give up and do whatever was necessary to sort of get the job done. And so, when we got the call that night that this had happened, it was one of those things where immediately I was like, the fuck? This guy's never quit anything in his life, and now he quit life? Like, how is this happening? And, there's guilt and a bit of shame around some of those thoughts in those moments now that I've started some of this work that I've been doing for the last 3 years. But in the moment, it was pure anger for giving up. And I was so fucking mad at him. And I'm still mad at him. But I think learning afterwards about some of the things that he was doing to try to get himself help, and the shortcomings that were out there in terms of, lost paperwork and the likes, at least made me feel like he didn't just give up, right? And so I think that, as we went through a lot of what we went through, it was hard at first to think that was a possibility. And we spent almost a year, right? A little over a year, just trying to figure out what the hell went wrong that he just gave up one day. And I mean, we'll never really truly know the answer, but getting the Board of Inquiry results at least helped us to understand how much he really had done to try to help himself first. So.
And it's unfortunate. I mean, it goes with military, police, fire, paramedics and stuff, that just sometimes those that need the help instantly, the bureaucracy and the paperwork, it impedes them, right? Like, it's okay for some people if it's, I broke my back and stuff like that. So it's going to take a little bit longer. Okay, that's fine. But it's not some of the mental health things that those individuals are going through where, no, like, maybe we should worry about the paperwork later. Like, let's rush, get this thing going, and then we'll backdate. We'll do whatever it takes. And I hope that starts to change where they realize, like, look, this paperwork's thing there too. If we get the doctor, get the doctor. We'll figure it out. We'll get everything going. We'll make everything copacetic. But I think that is the biggest crack. And yeah. I mean, I don't know how you fix bureaucracy and red tape, right? You got to do more bureaucracy to kind of cut out that bureaucracy. But I think that is something that really, really has to get kind of pushed, is if it's mental health, okay, we got to get these people to whatever health provider is needed for their situation. Then we'll worry about it. We'll worry about the funding. I don't like, there's always money somewhere. Just have an account with a couple of billion and just, okay, here's my number for that. Okay, it pools that. And then once the accounts and everything gets compensated, okay, now it's coming through this account. But I mean, that's one of the problems. There's other ones too, where sometimes people misdiagnose. Like I talked to a gentleman, Mike Rude, and with mefloquine toxicity, and sometimes the signs of that mimic almost PTSD and certain things. So you don't know, are you having PTSD? Are you having toxicity from the anti-malaria drugs? Or, you know, is it traumatic brain injury from the blast or this or that? Like there's so many different things that can affect the mental health. And to make sure you find that right path so that, you know, if it is, you know, malaria toxicity, okay, then we can do this. And that is a very different regimen and, you know, getting medication and then the mental health that way, as opposed to if it's TBI or if it's just, I saw some horrible stuff and I'm kind of broken inside. Like, I don't know how to process this. I either lost people or saw people get wounded and, you know, now my friends are this and I feel a guilt because I was standing next to them and nothing happened to me. Like there's so many different ways that the veterans can get affected by it. And I'm hoping with an organization like yours where veterans start finding out that there's more of the safety nets that there are. And if you can't go through the government means, that there's more than likely a veteran organization or a civilian one that they can help you out and talk or whatever. And I think that's important that, you know, and everyone has the dark moments, but to realize that there is somebody there, and what happened to you isn't unique because there are soldiers all over the world that you could reach out to. And I guarantee a Brit might have almost the exact same situation that you have as a Canadian. And by trying to reach out and find these veteran groups and police as well, please do that as well. Find these groups and talk to these people because somebody is feeling, or they did, and they found out, hey, this is what I did. Maybe this can help you. Here's a path. Here's an option. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that, and I think there's, you know, as small organizations, it's hard to get your name out there. It's hard for, you know, people to understand what you're offering. And I mean, my organization doesn't offer, we support organizations who are doing really great work, and, you know, happy to put anybody in touch with any of them. And, you know, working on some partnerships with a couple of organizations who are actually really going to be able to help, and looking at, you know, how we can set something up that way direct from our website. And so hopefully more to come on that later this year. But for us, you know, I said to in another interview, like, you know, I don't know if we can change it in our lifetime. You know, I'm 41 now, so I hope that I see changes in the next, you know, 40 something years, whatever. Hopefully I'll live that long. But you know, I do think that we have the opportunity to see changes in John's kid's lifetime. And so for us, it's really important to be able to find ways and, you know, create events and campaigns and things like that get families involved. You know, we were at Stomp the Bruce in Owen Sound on the weekend, run by a veteran, Mike Dobransky, also a Princess Patricia, and it's, you know, really to raise awareness for veterans and first responders and mental health. And so all of the vendors that were there were all mental health, you know, related in some way. So we were sitting there, and this woman and these two young guys, like little guys, maybe 6 and 8, something like that, came up, and, you know, so I'm giving them stickers and a few other things from our merch table, and just chatting about, you know, what we do and why we do it, and things like that. And she sat there and had a whole conversation with her kids about it being okay to talk about your feelings, and how sometimes, it can get overwhelming, and that's okay. And, you can ask for help and things like that. And this conversation maybe only lasted about 5 minutes, but it was one of those things where I was like, yes, this is what it's about, right? We advocate loudly, very loudly, for veterans and first responders who are serving now, and trying to support organizations who are supporting them in their mental health battles. But I think really the goal of Operation Talk to Me, Johnny, is getting so loud about what our family's gone through, that society, politicians, healthcare practitioners, anybody who has an opportunity to influence when and how we start talking about mental wellness as a society, can force that at a younger age, appropriately so, of course. But, teaching kids how to self-regulate and calm their central nervous system. Like, I'm an accountant, and we used to have this joke about, all the stupid shapes that we learned as kids, right? Like poly this and, whatever, right? All these stupid different
We remember
triangles.
Octagon just because of UFC and the stop sign.
Right. But like, you're like, what do I do with this? Like, sure, engineers might or whatever, but like the vast majority of civilians don't have any use for half of these things. And but we don't teach somebody how to do taxes. That was our point as accountants, right? Like, you don't know how to do your taxes, but you know what a parallelogram is. Like, why? But I think it's the same thing for mental health, right? Like, why aren't we having, teaching kids how to have a balanced mental wellness, so that as they grow to be adults, and start dealing with real world, actual crisis challenges, they're not already equipped with enough tools to sort of get them through, until they can get themselves into seeing a professional or whatever the case might be. But when you're starting with no tools in the toolbox and your entire world is on fire, like, of course we see 11 deaths a day from suicide. Like, people are surprised by that.
And I think you're right. That is being able to regulate your emotions and your feelings and learning to be able to talk, right? And I mean, as social media now, it's a lot easier than it was in the 90s. If you had a problem and it was, well, okay, these are my neighborhood. And, and I think there is slowly getting to be more resources and tools out there where, if you live rurally, you can still find a mental health professional. Like, there's a lot of these great veteran and first responder run businesses where they're seeing the gaps within the government system and going, okay, here's a gap here. This is what we can do to try and bandage as best as a civilian organization can for government bureaucracy and just how it works, to go, okay, this is a thing here. We can try and catch these people here with the net we can create. And another veteran or, first responder one go, okay, you've got that. We can work here. And I think it's important, especially with like organization like yours, where you start networking to all these different groups going, hey, this one deals with limb loss. This one deals with PTSD. This one deals with this and that. And as people start getting these, little kind of everything under one kind of roof where everyone talks to each other, goes, oh, this is your problem. We have a clinic here and they specialize in this, and they really look after vets and first responders. So I think it can slowly come. And I think within your lifetime, I definitely think there's more and more people now kind of beating on this drum, because it's not just military first responders, but the whole mental health thing affects everyone. And anybody at any moment can all of a sudden have a bad time where multiple family members die. All of a sudden, medical things come. You can't pay for this, house, food. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I had everything and now I'm in my car. So, and I mean, fates change. You start in your car and then everything goes great for you. Yeah. And I think we need to learn how to just be able to talk, right? And, anytime people try and do stuff, I mean, you have to be careful on what kind of social media you're going with. I see some people, they're on X. It's like, you're on the wrong kind of social media to get help. You're gonna, yeah, you can see the comments. You're being made fun of. Yeah, all right, there. Oh, there's that one. But I think people start seeing those needs. These kind of groups will happen where you can start talking with the community, and I think it's gonna be a hard road. But I think with individuals like you and everyone else that you start to know and getting going this, I honestly believe maybe 10, 15 years as the drum keeps beating more and more, I see it getting better and better because
Yeah, and I think we've seen it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say as veterans get out, they're kind of seeing what the ones that have gotten out ahead of them deal with. And there's some smart ones there that go, look, I've got this education, I was this and that. I'm just going to roll into this. Hey, look, I'm going to get Veterans Affairs to pay for my schooling, and I'm just going to polish off these skills. And look, now I can start up whatever, or do this, or a business and stuff like that. Or as I talked to somebody for a school project, like they're going to school to deal with mental health and stuff like that. They had the problem. Now they're going to school and stuff like that, and they can bring that personal experience. So I think there's a big pool for it. I just think people need to find their way. And, again, people get out of the military. There was a certain life. I had this was everything. And then you get in the civilian world, you realize nothing I really did in the military matters, right? Like it matters to the military, but you tell people all your courses and they go, okay, cool. Can you do this? Yeah, kind of. All right. That's all I care about. Right. And so there's a little bit of that loss of all the skills. And I mean, maybe if you become a cop or certain ones where some of those things transfer, but there's not a lot. So there's that loss of identity. And then if you're dealing with a mental health issue or, disability from limb loss or whatever, then you've got that problem too. So I find that's the big problem with a lot of people is that they get out and they're like, okay, I'm injured, but I was injured and I was a soldier. But now I'm injured and I'm just a civilian. And, you can't talk to a lot of people like that. So I'm hoping more veteran organizations happen where the help can happen. And, people that are feeling like Johnny can go, you know what, here's this help here. And the net that he didn't feel he had gets replaced or gets created. And because I mean, it sucks, right? Like I know a guy from my unit, he committed suicide and stuff like that. And today's the anniversary of a buddy that was killed in Afghanistan. So there's so much kind of thing that's going on with people like that. And you're just like, buddy and stuff with committing suicide, you're like, you do, like you're kind of angry. You're like, man, I wish I knew, I wish I could have heard something or somebody else. And everyone goes through that where you feel that loss and you feel like, what did I not do? And then, you wonder just anything. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, it sucks, but I'm just so glad that you're creating something so positive out of this that, we can take a tragedy and look at something that can come out of it.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think that's really been the powerful thing for us is, one of the things right after John died, I looked at my parents and I said, this will not be for nothing. Like it can, and I know that's a double negative, but, there is absolutely no way in the world that I am going to let this just be because, for me, that's not who John was. If there was some sort of injustice in some way, it was his personal mission to try to figure it out. And from, the very moment that we got through the funeral, until today, and I still feel very strongly about it, as we continue to grow the organization. But it's very important to me that John's story continue to get told, and in an unfiltered way, because one, it's helping me heal. I believe that it is helping my parents heal in some way. And, but also if there's any opportunity that what we're doing saves even one person, and I'll never know, but if it ever even saves one person, then it was 100% worth all of the effort. And the costs, there's so many costs, but anyway, we're getting there. But none of that matters because it's so important to me that we just continue to work on what's fair and reasonable for those who serve our communities in our country to be taken care of. And, I think that you make a very good point in that there are a lot of organizations, even over the last couple of years, particularly after COVID, that have come up and are really helping, veterans and first responders. But one of the things that I found it really interesting as you spoke is all of them are veteran or first responder led. And so, I mean, kudos to all of them for also having the bravery to stand up and be like, no, this happened to me, and I need to help somebody else with it. But where I think we're lacking as a society is one, we just don't talk about it enough. So everybody's like, oh, maybe it's just me that feels this way. And, I can certainly never compare what I'm going through now to what John was going through, and, some of the fears and things that he had, and, the nightmares and whatever else. But there was a really long time where I had to sleep with my phone immediately beside me in bed with the ringer turned up all the way, because I actually missed 5 phone calls from my parents the night that John died, because, you're not supposed to sleep with your phone in your room, and you're supposed to get a good night's sleep, and you're supposed to do all of these things. But after he died, I couldn't be away from it, because what if something else bad happened and they couldn't get me? And, so you go through these tragedies and these challenges in life, whether you're civilian or sign up to see these things on a day-to-day basis, and have to find some way to sort of live with those. And I think, as civilians, because we don't deal with it at the same rate that veterans and first responders do, it's much easier for us to sweep it under the rug and just kind of be like, oh, that's not happening. Like, we're just going to push that over there. And where on the flip side, veterans and first responders, nobody's sweeping it under the rug. They're outright hiding it because they don't want to risk, losing their careers or being put on administrative duties or whatever, because to your point, you lose an entire identity then on top of also dealing with mental health issues. And I think trying to deal with that is a whole other mess that society and civilians really just don't understand at all. And that's part of what Operation Talk to Me, Johnny is trying to do, is sort of build a bridge between the civilian understanding, because it's something that my parents and I could never fully understand with John, and we're related to him, and our veterans and first responders, to sort of help, showcase the fact that they do need to go through all of this, and they do need, compassion and understanding, and just sort of a bit of a leash to figure out where they're sitting with their feelings and how they want to deal with those things. And then if we can, and it hasn't launched yet, but we are launching a resources page. And if we can get some of these veteran and first responder or civilian organizations on that page to be able to help people, I think that's going to go a long way in seeing progress. But one of the things that I really want to see, and this is the part I don't know if I'll see in my lifetime, because I do think that, veterans and first responders do an excellent job of taking care of each other. Since I've been in the community, although a civilian, so it's a bit weird. Since I've been in the community, of veterans and first responders, that's one of the things that I've noticed. They are all very passionate about taking care of each other. And I think part of that comes from the job. Part of it comes from an understanding of, what everybody is going through, because you're going through it yourself. But I would love to see, our society, our politicians actually take notice of what we're doing as individuals to try to make this better, because the healthcare system isn't there right now, because there are not financial supports, that take care of this, because the bureaucracy is too stringent or too difficult. You know, since John, I've struggled with my own mental health a little bit. And, you know, there's days where I'm like, I can't even get out of bed. You want me to fill in what kind of paperwork? And I can't imagine what it's like for somebody who's been through, you know, I'm not comparing, but somebody who's been through, you know, multiple bombs in Afghanistan, or, you know, come across a car accident with an infant who is now no longer with us. Like, how do you sleep at night? And I don't know that, you know, forcing people to do the paperwork before they can even talk to somebody about talking to somebody is the right approach. And until we understand that and have some compassion for that, you know, I don't see a big dip in suicides coming.
Yeah. And I wonder though too, if sometimes, you know, because you're in the military and then there's your release date, you're out. I wonder if there would be a benefit to a gradual, like, okay, now you're 4 days a week. Now you're 3 days. Okay, start getting that civilian life. Start trying to go into it and kind of slowly lose that identity as you build a new one.
Yeah, I had a
know.
conversation with an RSM about this, and I won't name him, but I had a conversation with an RSM about this, and I said to him, I was like, do you think that you guys kind of do a bit of a disservice to those guys who are transitioning out and retiring? I said, like, look, the reality is, you know, in a class going into Saint Jean or wherever else for basic, of the whatever 100 guys, I don't know how many actually go, of the 100 guys, how many are staying in that career until like their 50s, 60s, you know, whatever, right? One, maybe.
Yeah.
The rest of them are either going to be too broken, their knees, their backs, their, you know, minds, whatever, to make it much past 20 years. So now they're in their 40s. They have few, if any, transferable skills. And they've spent their entire child life being told what to do and how to do it. Then they spent the first 20 years of their adult life being told and what to do and how to do it, and when. And now you want them to just go be civilians? And so I said, like, wouldn't it make sense if a part of basic training is having them think about and plan for what they plan on doing afterwards? You know, wouldn't it make a lot more sense? You know, there's that guy on Instagram who does these hilarious videos, and he did a video about how they were going to talk about mental health in the military, and that means strapping on a really heavy backpack and all your gear and going for, you know, a 45-kilometer walk and coming back and, you know, puking and that's it. Now, you know, now you're aware of mental health, right? And I think that's something that I'm trying to get at with the military is, like, you know, why don't you have people like me come in and talk about, you know, what can happen if they don't start taking care of their mental health now? And they're like, oh, no, could be triggering. Like, oh, okay, good to know. And I said, like, you know, why don't you teach them how to be civilians before you let them go? They're like, well, we have the transition unit. And I was like, it's not the same thing. Like, and I know that, you know, I've talked to a few guys, and I know that the transition unit is you get out what you put in. And unfortunately, John was in the transition unit during COVID. So there was nothing to get out because there was nothing to put in because he was at home 5 days a week. But, you know, there's no requirement. And it's like, well, we can't make them do it. Like, you make them fill sandbags over here to carry them over here just to carry them back again tomorrow. But you can't make them take a course in the transition unit while they're getting paid by you. Somebody explain it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the military is an old bull, and it's not going to turn or do anything that it doesn't have the farmer with the hook leading it by the nose, right? And I think for some of this, more politicians have to start getting invited to these events from the local, for the provincial or state or wherever country you live in and however your country is organized. Start bringing them in, get them to understand these things like that. And that mental health doesn't just affect the military, it affects everyone. But if you can try and, everyone knows the military first responders is always going to be a group that needs it. Not a lot of accountants usually need, a lot of the mental health for stuff like that. That's what I thought, right? So, you got to make it interesting for them where the politician goes, hey, this is something I can get some brownie points off of. It's got to entice them in that way. And then once they get that way, maybe they'll actually be inspired. And then it'll actually kick in where they go, you know what? This is something I actually truly believe in. And it affects everyone. And, can't keep having soldiers and cops and everyone killing themselves because they didn't find help. So I think the more...
Or it was too hard to get it.
So I think the more that organizations like yours and the ones that actually do mental health and stuff like that, I think if they start involving and inviting politicians to be like, this is what we're doing. This is our goals for the future. This is how we want to expand, help out this. We want military community, first responders and the civilian community. Look at what we can do. And I think that, and then once it starts getting at the politicians, then the politicians will start telling military brass, hey, look, you guys should start trying to figure out a year before how to start getting into the civilian world and stuff like that. Because, the military is only going to do so much, and the military only has so much budget for certain things, right?
Of course.
Bullets, ammo, certain other things. Hey, that's what their priority is. And then, okay, well, these things here, we'll put a little bit here, we'll put a little bit there. But I think that's the big key is starting to get those. And those that are supportive of the military and stuff like that, getting them in first. And then, using their word of mouth and the clout and the fact that they can write policy is what I think needs to get done because, organizations like yours can do so much, but the politicians actually have to get in there with some mortar and actually start patching it up going, okay, now we fix it. Look, this sidewalk looks nice. This highway isn't full of potholes and missing guardrails and everything else that, people are seeming to hit. And then the more and more you hit it, the worse you feel. And then the car just breaks down. And that's the unfortunate thing is, I don't know, incentivizing politicians some way for them. And then, I don't know, big businesses too, some way for them to make a lot of money and stuff off of while helping others. And maybe some benefits will happen. That's kind of what it is. It's got to be incentivized for people with money to go, I can help and make more money. Sweet.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's been interesting because we've had reasonable support from the MP in my parents' area. And she actually came out and, did the last couple of blocks with us in our ruck in 2023. November of 2023 and, said a few words at the cemetery when we arrived there. And so I think that was, pretty good. But then I've got, the MPP in my area. The MP just turned over, so I haven't met him yet. But the MPP in my area, and I'm like, hey, my husband and you talked about developments in the area. And so anyway, he gave me your cell phone number. Would love to have a chat with you about, veteran and first responder mental health, and what, the Ontario health care system sort of needs to do. And also, how we handle mental health in the Ontario court system, because that causes problems. And he's like, oh, can't help with either one of those things. I'm like, sorry, wait, the Ontario healthcare system and the Ontario provincial court system, you can't do anything about as a politician. Nope. All right, then.
and that's the problem though too, right? You'll get the ones that are helpful, but then you get the ones that go, I don't know, that might a re-election down the line, that might do this. And I need these people to be happy here. And but sometimes that's also then finding the ones that are going to run and going, hey, I'm pro this and I'm pro that, and just giving them all the support. And then the ones that are just lazy and they go, oh, if I do something, that means I'm accountable.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes, of course, you're accountable. You became this position. Do something. So I
Yeah.
think that's going to be a major one. The ones that are lazy, I mean, for anything in politicians, right? Like there's some that are just there, collect the paycheck, all right, get them out, get somebody in who actually wants to do something, who actually supports mental health initiatives. Because I
Yeah.
mean, and that's the thing that, politicians, hey, one day you might have it. Who knows what you see? You might see a car accident, something might happen to a loved one of yours, and you just break. It's kind of one of those things that investing into mental health, you never know when you're going to trip over that and stumble. And then you go, oh, good thing I had this net instead of falling over the edge. So, and sometimes you just need to be blunt with the politicians where you go, look, it can affect you, it can affect every one of your loved ones. Should we not start looking into this? Maybe incentivizing people who want to get into the mental health industry, make it easier for them, make it so they can get, hey, so it doesn't cost me so much. Hey, maybe you get certain good grades. Hey, guess what? The government's going to pay a bunch of this. Like, I think there's certain careers where if you pass and you got good marks, you go, okay, you really did this. Maybe we should, taxpayers go, hey, maybe these doctors and certain engineers, I don't know, I like people who make bridges and stuff like that, certain ones where you go, hey, we need these kind of people so our buildings don't topple and stuff. Maybe, they get a better tax break. Okay, if you're a doctor, you get 10% less in taxes. Hey, mental health. Encourage people to actually get into the industries where they go, hey, yeah, I can help people and I can afford stuff again. I just think it'd be beneficial.
Well, and I think that's kind of, getting people into the mental health, education wise and things like that, I think is going to be so important. Like the BOI results, as I mentioned. So I don't know if you know, but anytime there's a military death, there's what's called a board of inquiry. So they comb through the personnel files, they interview various people and, family members and, the brass and whoever else that may have known this person and might be able to provide some information about the incident, if there was an incident, or, the factors that may have led up to the suicide. And it was the most frustrating conversation I think I've ever had. But they sat down at my mom and dad's kitchen table and they started to give us the results of this. And they're like, yep, there's no liability here, but definitely the military was at fault because, we know that John was working with a social worker on base who needed to take a leave during COVID. And, then there wasn't another social worker on base because we only have one. And we couldn't get, and we weren't really sure how long he was going to be gone for. So, we didn't replace him. And we know that John tried multiple times to get an off-base mental health professional, but, they lost the paperwork or it wasn't completed properly or insert 8,000 other excuses here. And we know that while he was meeting with the social worker on base, he was, doing really well and whatever, and things started to decline after the social worker. So, we've talked to, we had 3 suggestions and, can't remember what the first 2 were. And the third one was, that they should always have 2 social workers on base at any time. And that way, if one leaves, at least there's crisis support still available. And I was like, okay, good. So like, they're going to be doing this. And he's like, no, we suggested it, but they don't actually have to do it. And I was like, so you're telling me, that this likely would have saved his life, but the $60,000 a year for a social worker or, whatever it is that they get paid, $80,000, I don't know, isn't worth it. I'm like, guys, like, they're like, and I'm like, so what's the point of the BOI? Like, you can make suggestions, but you can't actually enforce anything. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, that is classic military right there. Like, so, but I think, that's generally the problem, right? That access to mental health supports being either 1, daunting, or 2, just inaccessible, depending on where you are. is so challenging. And if we're not going to get the politicians or the healthcare system or whatever to make sure that we're incentivizing people to be in those fields, you know, it's going to be hard to make any significant changes down the road.
Yeah, and I think people kind of see some of the stuff, right? They see the suicides, they see kind of the housing with the problems with the military and everything else. And they're having recruiting problems and stuff like that. I think if the brass seriously got into it, goes, okay, we need to do a little bit of an image change. We need to start building some houses, really show and start hiring some mental health professionals and start kind of showing that we're looking after people. Because, I mean, if you get out of the military and you're bitter about it, you're not going to be telling people, hey, yeah, it was fun. I went on the ranges. I did this, did that, got to, you know, whatever your military career did. No, it's going to be like, it was shit. I got treated like shit. They fed me shit. And I don't know, everything was just shit, right? And you're like, oh, so should I join? Do you want to be treated like shit? No. I don't know, then don't. Or do another job. They'll treat you like shit too. Right? Like, you know, like they're desperate for so much that if you just did a little bit of that stuff, you go, hey, guess what? We're going to rush through housing. There's going to be more housing than we need. Because if it swells, hey, guess what? There we go. Extra housing. We'll think ahead. The base only has 3,000. We'll build for 5 because, hey, if there's ever a need for it, we have it. I mean, but it's the problem with many countries and stuff like that is the government can cut certain things to make it, hey, we balance the budget a little bit more. Look at how much we spent, $20 billion last year. This year we're spending 15. But then you figure out what they cut are like key things that you hope just don't happen. And then you're like, so.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a difficult thing where, like you said, it's like, no. These are just suggestions. We're not mandated to actually implement this stuff for mental health for the troops. I mean, that costs money. So but again, sometimes it just takes a good officer in charge, right? A good CDS that goes, you know what? This is what we're going to fight for. This is now kind of what we're going to do. We're not going to worry about any of these stupid things that don't matter. They look good on paper and they write good, but because again, suicide prevention and mental health, they're kind of downer topics to begin with. So if they can do something else and hey, we're going to talk about this, or this is the new thing that we're going to do. So
yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know. I just miss old Uncle Rick. I mean, he was the best. Oh, Rick Hillier.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're a once in a generation kind of officer. So, but again, you get somebody like him in it, somebody who goes, I'm not too worried about stepping on the politician's toes. I'm going to make these things heard. And that's what you need. You need a CDS that goes, look, mental health seems to be a big thing. Let's start taking care of our troops so that while they're in and as they're transitioning out, and then once they're out, they're veteran affairs problems. But again, right? Like, not another system, but again, right? Like
that's broken.
It's broken. And I think that if a lot more vets jumped into veterans affairs, because that's one of the problems though too. You have people that they're civilians, they've never been over, they don't know exactly what's going on. And if somebody's like, yeah, I went over an IED, it was 3 155 shells stacked together, and this is why my head like this. They go, okay, those are just numbers. It's just things, but they don't understand.
Yeah, I was going to say, those are just numbers to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
And they don't understand it, right? And they go, oh, okay, that sucks. But somebody who goes, what? Okay, I only went over one with one, and my head was like this. You 3? Okay, let's, because again, they understand and stuff like that. So I think that might be a key component too, is making it easier for them to, again, there's certain jobs where, you might need certain education, stuff like that. But I think just having more veterans in as consultants or as a new position, make it up, whatever it is, a talk to me guy where you're feeling bad. Hey, here's a whole bunch of veterans numbers, reach out here, whatever, something like that. That might be a key thing too, is, maybe Veterans Affairs reaching out. And if there's vets that want to do that, then Veterans Affairs can make something like that, where almost like a crisis center kind of thing, but it's veterans, so that they're having a problem. Hey, what were you? You're infantry? Yeah, I was infantry. Oh, you're artillery? Hey, we can get you to an artillery guy. Let's talk stories, stuff like that, hash it out. I think that might be a key thing. It's just one of those organizations taking the initiative.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it, right? And I think if enough of us continue to make enough noise, eventually somebody somewhere is going to go, huh, maybe we should actually care about these people.
Mhm.
And, is that going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. But that's not going to stop me from continuing to get loud about it. So
Exactly. And it just motivates, right? I mean, okay, this group isn't listening. There's an election happening whenever. All right, there's a new politician to start reaching out to. And oh, hey, look, this one's receptive now. And that's always the thing. Sometimes the guy who's in your riding, it won't last forever. Sometimes they last 20 years, but usually they don't last forever.
yeah.
And then, you get somebody in there and you just try. And again, that's the thing too. Who you elect matters. Don't just elect a party or whatever. Like, what does this person stand for? What is their background? Do they seem like a slimy person? But hey, they're the party you like, so I'll vote them in anyways because my team, my party. There's a lot that these Canadians and Americans and Brits and everyone that, we got to start kind of paying these attentions to. The people you put in dictate how it happens. If they don't care about mental health, then no legislation or nothing will go into helping mental health. So,
Well, and that's exactly it, right? And I think, that's one of the biggest problems in Canadian politics is we vote parties, not people. And I mean, to some degree you have to if you want certain things dealt with. But at the same time, you're like, oh my God, like, I know particularly some of the MPPs that I've dealt with, and I'm like, you work for the right party for me, but not like, I don't know if you actually do anything.
well, and that's the thing too. People don't research and see, is the person actually a conservative, a liberal, an NDP, or is that just something they did because they go, this is where I live. This riding is NDP, so I'm just going to go as an NDP party, even though, and then they get in and they go, okay, what are you doing? Or what, like it's all those little things, right? Like there's always the little imposters within the parties when you go, that person, okay. There are people voted for him, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, we're not fixing Canadian elections anytime soon.
No.
I mean, there's been a few promises of it, but it gets too difficult once they get in, and we'll just leave it the way it is because if we change it, that kind of ruins my party's power.
Yeah.
Oh.
We could go down that road for a long time, Brian.
Now, for some of the future goals, 5-10 years, what are you wanting to start making some of your next steps for the organization?
Yeah. So the first event that we did in 2023 was a ruck march from the Sarnia Armories to the Wyoming Cemetery. And that event really was for us to kick off sort of who Johnny was. And so it was, meant to sort of show where his military career started and where it ended and be sort of impactful in that way. And the 24.5 kilometers was fun. We had a great day. There was 78 of us do it. And it was, it was a lot of fun. But for those of us who are civilians and don't regularly ruck march, that's not a lot of fun.
I don't know anybody in the military that says rocking is fun. I don't know. Fucking rocking.
Yeah. Everybody's like, fuck, really? A ruck march? And I was like, well, what else would you guys do? And they're like, never mind. But like, seriously, like, I think it took me a year to grow back a toenail. Okay. Like,
what kind of weight were you guys carrying?
I only had 15 pounds on. There were a few guys who did it with like 45s. But yeah, I had 15 on. So, and that was plenty for me. But this year when we did our event in May, it was really important that we started bringing in the family aspect of it. For a couple of reasons. One, my parents and I are civilians. I'm not going to sit here and do military type things and sort of have this like imposter syndrome situation where we're pretending to be something that we're not. We aren't. We are not military. We don't wear uniforms of any type. And so for us, it was about making sure that we were taking what our strength was within the community and, you know, showcasing that. And I've had multiple people tell me that our strength is that a lot of people don't think about their families when they are considering pulling the trigger or, doing whatever it is that they're going to do to take their lives. And so getting really loud about that is a way for us to be a different voice, adding to sort of, that impact of why you should stay in the fight and continue to be here. And so for us, it was really important to bring that aspect into our event. And so we did a family fun day. And we had all sorts of games for the kids and, vendors, mostly military and first responders. And then we had a obstacle course that was so disorganized, but hilarious. And so, it was a lot of fun. We made fun of the military and each of the first responders in the obstacle course as well, which a lot of the cops and firefighters thought was hilarious. But like you had to like drop and go under this netting, like do army crawl under this netting and then run to a hula hoop and shine your shoes. Right. And so the idea was like, let's have some fun with this. Let's make it entertaining for people who are watching, but also have a bit of a physical challenge to go along with, representing the mental challenge that is the case with these things. And so, so it was not my most organized situation, but it was hilarious and everybody loved it. So we will definitely do it again. And the goal there is really to bring out as many veteran and first responder mental health supports as possible. So I was super fortunate. We were able to get 988 there, as well as, various, suicide prevention organizations, a ton of, veterans and everyday heroes out of St. Thomas, and a few others, Wounded Warriors, their Chatham guys were there. And so it was great because a lot of the first responders were able to kind of go around and meet these different organizations and learn what they do and find out what supports might be available to them. And, kind of going through those things. So it was really good to be able to build that bridge between these organizations and the, veterans and first responders who attended. And I think that's one of the big things that we're trying to plan go forward as an organization is how we can use our connections, and, through the people that we meet or whatever, to start to build these bridges. So the resource page is going to be a big part of that. And then the plan is to have another event in mom and dad's area again next year at the end of May. And hopefully to bring it, this way. I'm Cambridge, Kitchener-Waterloo area in Ontario. And so, start to bring it this way and then see what we can do from there, right? We know a lot of guys in Edmonton. Maybe one day we'll be able to set one up out that way, with some supports from them. But the plan is really to have these sort of family fun days that make it a safe place for families to have, conversations about mental wellness. And I like to use mental wellness because I think that that's where the focus needs to be. I find mental health generally is a very reactive, situation. And I think with how much we know about tools that are available, it doesn't have to be reactive. We can be proactive and start talking more about mental wellness. So, get these families out, and kids at a young age, seeing interacting with these everyday heroes and also these mental health supports, and being able to learn at a young age that talking about your feelings and feeling whatever it is that you're feeling is normal and is appropriate, and finding ways to both have fun with it, because as I said, John liked to have fun in anything he was doing, no matter how shit it was. And but also, really be able to sort of just normalize these conversations, and not make it this scary thing to talk about for kids, because after all, the first time they were exposed to it, or the 10th time they were exposed to it, they're going down a 30-foot inflatable obstacle course and, talking about, being sad one day or whatever, right? And so I think being able to find ways that we can normalize that and make it fun and make it comfortable, for kids and families and our active veterans and first responders, is going to be, I hope, is going to really be impactful in the way that they approach it going forward after one of our events. So the goal is to grow these events a little bit. We obviously do it to raise money for different organizations. As I said, we're looking at partnering potentially with a treatment center here in Ontario, and seeing what that might look like, and figuring out how that could fit into some of the things that we're doing. And then, of course, continuing to support some of these, grassroots organic initiatives like Veterans and Everyday Heroes and other organizations across the country, although it's easy because Ontario, I get to actually meet people, but other organizations across the country that are doing, really impactful things for veterans and first responders.
Now, what have some of the challenges been? I mean, it's never easy starting an organization and getting it going, getting the name out there. What have been some of the challenges you've encountered, and what have you done to kind of overcome some of the challenges so far?
Yeah. I think some of the biggest challenges is one time, growing an organization like this, and kudos to all those who have come before me and done it with some of their organizations. But growing an organization like this, you have to be passionate about it, because it is so easy to be like, oh my God, forget this. Like, I don't have time for this. Now it's starting to stress me out. Like, and so, I think being able to kind of take that step back when you need to. And thankfully, we're very fortunate that obviously it's my parents and I who run it. We founded it. But we have a lot of other family who are involved and who help out, and, are willing to sort of assist where needed. I know after the last few weeks of events and different things that we've had going on with the organization, I said to my sister-in-law, I was like, I need you just to post on social media. Cause like we have an incredible following right now. We're really starting to make some pretty decent impression numbers and things like that, but I don't have the energy to keep it up. Like I just don't have time to create content. The creative juices just aren't flowing for me right now. And so I think if you're going to do something like this, one, you need to make sure that you're passionate about it, because it will take quite a bit of time to get it off the ground. And two, you need to surround yourself with people who are going to jump in to help you out. And also set expectations for yourself. Like I don't need to solve the mental health crisis in veterans and first responders overnight. And sometimes I have to remind myself that that's just not practical. But, so I think setting expectations for yourself of what it is that you actually want to accomplish, and focusing on those things is really, impactful in how you approach what you're doing every day. But you also have to be agile to some degree, which I know sounds completely contradictory, but all of a sudden something will come up. The other day I got a message. well, even you know, all of a sudden you dropped into my inbox of messages and it was like, oh yeah, sure, great, I'll do a podcast. And so it's like, okay, how do you know, what do I want to talk about? What are the points that I want to say? And so, you know, being able to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, I need to pause this for a second because this is a great opportunity for me to get my message out, or for me to, you know, market, you know, what it is that we're doing, or whatever the case is. And so being able to be a bit agile, I think, is good. I'm fortunate in that I've got a bit of flexibility at work. And my boss knows that I run this organization. So I do, you know, I'll pick hours up elsewhere in order to make time for things like this that are so important. But I think, you know, really understanding for yourself what you're capable of, and not expecting too much of yourself, while you start to figure out your path. You know, even with our organization, when we started it, I thought it was going to be something completely different. And now, you know, here we are a couple of years later, and it's like, okay, I'm really happy with the direction that this took. And I'm really glad that I didn't force myself to stay on a path that just didn't quite make sense. And so really being open to those things while never losing the passion for what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish, I think is so important. I certainly didn't think we were going to be planning family fun days, but hey, it was a good time. And then, you know, I think also I'm fortunate in that I did have a bit of a network already, in the first responder veteran space through, you know, being an All OK brand ambassador and doing really bad push-ups for, you know, one of their push-up challenges back in February of 2023. That one's on my personal Instagram, not the foundations. But and so, you know, I wasn't afraid to make a complete ass of myself in the pursuit of just getting loud about what it was that was important to me. And I think that, you know, at the time, I was still reeling from John's death. It had only been, you know, just over a year. And we had dealt with a bunch of drama and shit and whatever else through that year. So I really hadn't had an opportunity to grieve him yet at that point. And so doing that, one, really gave me an outlet that I didn't know I needed until I was doing these terrible push-ups to a song and a story and the whole bit. But then all of a sudden, you know, I had somebody on the East Coast that I've never met, doesn't know me, doing push-ups to the same song that I chose for the day, every single day, right along beside me. And so that vulnerability and that openness to just be like, screw it, I'm going to make a complete ass of myself on social media for the entire world to see and for it never to be deleted, because we all know that shit will come back and haunt you. And I don't care, because my message is that important to me. And if one person looks at that video, great. And if nobody looks at that video, I don't really give a shit, because I need to do this for me. And so from that, I was able to really develop some cool relationships with people who have been huge supporters. And then I've had Johnny's buddies, who have been, you know, really supportive and have helped guide me in different things when I'm like, what does this mean in military speak? Because that's, I don't even think that's English, guys. And so, you know, I've had some good supports that way. But I think the biggest challenge that we face is we never wore the uniform. And I don't know exactly what it's like to be in your shoes or a police officer's shoes or whatever. And I think there are days that fear can become quite overwhelming, of like, oh my God, I'm such an imposter. I'm just like, these people think that I'm just a lunatic who, you know, they all serve together or they all serve their communities. And I'm just this accountant who showed up one day and decided to, you know, make videos. And so I think making sure that you're surrounding yourself with a good base of people who encourage you in the right ways is really important. And I've been fortunate that I've had multiple reminders right at that exact moment. And they don't know that I need it in that moment, but right at that exact moment that says, Lisa, what you and your parents are doing is exactly on the right path and you are helping people. Again, I do this primarily to help myself, but if I can help people in the process, even better. And so, you are helping people and, keep doing what you're doing because it's really impactful. And I swear, like Johnny's looking out for me or something, because there's days that I'm like, I'm going to have to quit this because I don't have anything else to add to the conversation. I think they've heard it all already. I don't run or do push-ups or whatever. And so, I mean, I probably should, but I don't. And so, I'm like, what can I even add to this community anymore? And then all of a sudden, I'll get a new follower on Instagram. And I always like to thank everybody for following because I think it's really important to acknowledge that somebody felt that your stuff was good, unless I can tell it's a bot. If they got 5 pictures of half naked girls, I know that person is going to unfollow me in a couple days. But I think it's important, right? With so many accounts out there and so many people doing such great work in this community, the fact that they chose to follow us is important, I think. And so I like to thank people for that. And the number of times where, I'm ready to give up on everything and be like, okay, nope, I don't have anything else. And then somebody will be like, oh yeah, no, thanks. I saw that picture that you posted of Johnny and him and I worked together here and we did this together. And, I have this funny story about him and whatever. And, keep doing what you're doing because we all miss him. And I'm like, oh shit, now I can't give up.
And that's the thing sometimes, those people that make you feel guilty, like, you know what, I can't quit because I did have a goal and I did have a dream to this. And everyone has it. I mean, there's times where everything's cloud nine. You're like, this is the best. Then you hit a hard day. You're like, oh, fuck.
I don't want to do this anymore.
This isn't on cloud nine anymore. I was having a blast. Like it was just easy. And that's the things though, right? Like there's the plateaus, but then there's the, all right, next step to build up the numbers or to get the word out there more. It's going to be the slog again. Then you'll, okay, hey, yeah. It happens all the time, right? If it was easy, nobody would truly care about it. It'd be like, yeah, that thing I do, whatever. All right.
Well,
but when you earn it,
yeah.
You build it, and you go, there was one follower, one person that heard Johnny's story, and now there's 2, and then there's this, and now we're at 1,000. Oh, wow. Like there's always those, it takes effort. And that's the thing that, a lot of people, they're like, okay, I did one podcast. Where's my million of views? It's like, you weren't famous to start with. Like you're starting from ground zero. Guess what? The OnlyFans have more clout than you do right now. Like you have to find your audience and build it, and people will follow you, and then people will unfollow you, and you go, oh, I went up 10, now I'm down 15. Shit. Right. And all right, let's whatever. And you go and you build it, and then it keeps going. And yeah, it's just for anything you truly love, there will be the moments where you're like, I hate this. What was I thinking? And then you go, that's what I was thinking. All right, brain's back on track. Let's keep going.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? You're like, okay, now, I know for myself why I'm doing this. As I said, it has been, instrumental in helping me heal as much as I have. And I don't know if I'll ever be truly healed from this, but it's been, a very important step in my healing journey of doing this, because as I said, from the day that we buried him, I was like, there is no chance this is going without, something good coming of this. And so, but those days get hard where you're like, God, I'm just on the internet whining about how my brother died. Like nobody cares about this anymore. And then all of a sudden somebody cares. And I mean, I know lots of people care, but you get in those spirals, right? Mm-hmm. We've all done it. And you're like, nope, nope, nobody cares about this. And, okay, Lisa, he's been gone for 3 years, like wrap it up already. And then all of a sudden somebody follows and, they tell you that your story was impactful that day, or that something you shared was something that they really needed a reminder of, or, they knew and missed Johnny. And you're like, right, this is the goal now. That's right. At first, it was just for me to do 22 bad push-ups and tell a little story. And now the goal is to use John's death for some sort of good. And, I don't know how much good, but there is at least a little bit of good. And so I'm going to keep doing it. And, as long as we can keep that momentum going, I think that, growing the organization, hopefully doing a few things, in some different locations, particularly around Ontario, but perhaps I can get the boys out in Edmonton to help out as well. And eventually making it something that his kids can choose, what they want to do with it after that to remember their dad.
And I definitely think this is going to grow, right? Like you said, there's those that know him. You can start branching out to Edmonton, all these different places and stuff like that. And it'll just take a little bit. And then all of a sudden you go, hey, we've got something happen in BC now. Hey, we've got something happen in Edmonton. And it grows and grows, grows. And then once it gets to a certain size, it almost starts to grow itself, right? Because you've got enough content out there, that old stuff people find, and hey, this is new to me. What is this? Okay. So yeah, I see it with a lot of the different ones. It's why I love talking to veterans or, organizations and getting everyone's story out there, because there's going to be somebody's words that somebody will hear and they go, God damn it, I needed to hear that. And it's like the same thing though, too. You're like, okay, who am I going to find for an interview? And nobody wants one right now. And okay, these people are busy, maybe later. And it's like, all right, well, that's when school starts. And that's when I stop doing this and start concentrating on school again and everything. And then, you get one, you're like, yes, I got one. And then, just keep going, right? And then you enjoy it. And then I love editing and I love finding people's stories, right? Like it's the best thing I've ever gotten to do is get into this program and learn how to do this stuff. And just, God, like I'm definitely going to be a part of this stuff too and help get this word out there, right? And you never met the man, but going to still do this and stuff like that. So we'll just keep pushing this stuff. And that's what I love about finding more people is just get the story out there. You go, oh my God, their passion is now part of my passion, right? And it links in with some of my beliefs. So I can't wait to, just keep following and, just watching the development of what's going to happen next. And like you said, it's the fun thing of what you think right now is going to happen. There might be a person that joins the organization and they go, what about this and this? And you go, whoa. That is totally going to work. Let's do that right now. Why didn't we do that before? And stuff. So it's exciting, right? Because I love hearing these stories, and it was a tragic thing, but in the future, it's going to offer so much hope for people that go, you know what? Wow, I didn't realize these were these options here. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, we're looking forward to what we come up with. So hopefully some good things down the road, and always happy to chat about what we're up to.
I'll keep reaching out. I love finding out, down the road, like a couple of years, and you'd be like, you won't believe it. Wow, look at this. And be like, oh, you guys have expanded quite a bit. So, and again, you never know, right? You might be having, satellite things in the UK and France and the States and stuff like that, because people, and again, it might be somebody who also lost their brother or sister who was a service member. They go, you know what? Me and you have a similar story. Let's link up. Let's do this. Let's do that. So I'm always inspired. So just keep it up. And anytime you're feeling low, just know there's a bunch of people just supporting it. And that, again, I guarantee there's many people who have felt the benefit of it. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that.
How can people reach out if they want to help, if they want to support and find more information?
Yeah, so our website's definitely the best place to go. So www.opt2mj.com. or op talk to the number me Johnny at gmail.com are the best ways to get us. And of course, Instagram, Facebook, we're always around there posting something usually. In terms of supporting, really just, sharing, making sure that our voice is getting as far as it can. Because we're a nonprofit and not a charity, I do try to rely more heavily on corporate donations than personal donations because I can't give donation receipts. Maybe that will change down the road, but for now, I'm an accountant. I know how much work is involved in a charity, so we're just going to keep it simple. We've got some really cool things coming up. We are going to be working with Christian Lillington and Warriors for Life and collaborating with him on some scholarships for kids moving on from high school into post-secondary for a helping field. And so John's, the very first one in memory of John applications are open now at LCCVI in Petrolia, which is where John and myself and our youngest brother went to high school. And so doing some cool things like that to make sure that, we're tying our name and the cause of mental wellness to sort of the new recruits coming out early.
Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show. This was a great honor.
Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing more episodes from you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for watching, and catch me again later soon. All right. Talk to you later, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks for your time. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help grow the show. And remember, get back up.